Hi guys, I'm Chris. Welcome to this week's tutorial. Let's draw together. In today's tutorial, we're going to be creating a watercolor feather in Procreate, and we'll cover how to use the selection tool to create some cool watercolor effects and use the hairbrush to make these little veins in the feathers. It's stuff I've never really tried before, but let's experiment together. So I've created a free color palette for you as always for this tutorial, so you can just hit the link in the description below to download and install into Procreate. And we'll be using all free brushes, my favorite sketch, monoline, and watercolor brushes, and you can find the link for them in the description below as well. I'd also love it if you stop by the shop and say hello and have a look at all the creations there, and there's some free goodies for you too. So I've created a new canvas using the spec scene here, and we're all ready to go. All right, so let's start by doing a simple sketch. So I'm just gonna grab my favorite sketch that you'll find below, and I'm just gonna draw kind of a curved line, sort of get the beginnings of the shape, and then it's just gonna be rounded. I think I've gone a little high there. Like so. Kind of like almost leaf shape. Round, bit rounded at the top. Almost sort of the same width throughout, maybe a little bit more narrow at the bottom. And then we're gonna have the downy bits here. And that should be good. I'm just gonna move this into the center. I went a little bit off to the side there. That's all right. Okay, so then we're gonna want to have a few little splits here. So maybe like that. Maybe some will be bigger. I just wanted it to look a little irregular. And let's see, maybe like that. Maybe we'll have another little one down here. Just kind of mapping out where I want things to go. So I think that's a good start for our little sketch. And this actually isn't going to come all the way up, of course. Just note that. It's going to be like so. All right. So with that in mind, let's start coloring in with our watercolor. So I'm just going to add a new layer, and I'm going to bring that below. And I'm going to set my sketch to multiply, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 40% or wherever you're comfortable with. Make sure you're on the layer below. And then I'm going to grab my watercolor, and I'm going to make sure the opacity is at 100%. I'm going to be at about, well, let's see, at about 4%. But before I start coloring in, actually, I'm going to import a watercolor texture, which will make this look a lot nicer and a lot more realistic as a watercolor painting. And that is in the description below, and you can grab that for free. So you can do the same as me. So I'm just going to go to my wrench and go to add and say insert file, and it'll be wherever you have put it, maybe in your downloads. All right, and there it is. So I'm just sizing it to the size of my canvas here. And then I'm just gonna go and select multiply on that as well. Okay, so now we're gonna actually have to go in and add a new layer and bring that below. So maybe we'll just lock that watercolor layer just so we make sure we don't paint on it. So now you can see you have a watercolor texture, so this will make it a little bit more interesting. So let's start with maybe our lightest purple color here. We have our watercolor brush, and again, add about 4%. So every section I'm going to be holding down my pen the entire time, just so I don't get that bleeding look. So I'm just going to keep my pen down, do that section. It's okay if we overlap there. We'll go and fix that in a second. And then we can bring down our pen quite a bit to maybe about 2% and do these little fluffies. And you can vary your pressure to have skinnier and thinner ones, which I think is nice. Just vary those a bit. Might even be easier to turn off your sketch layer for a second too. You want to see what you're doing. Have them going in different directions. That's good. All right, so let's put that sketch layer back on. Okay, and then I'm going to come in and just bring a layer on top of that. And I'm just going to grab the white and let's use our monoline because this monoline brush actually has a little bit of a nubbly edge to it. So that will make it nice for our use here. And I'm just going to, actually I should tell you what this is on. It is on about the size. Let's have it at 50% for the size. And just bring that center line down here. I know we're not going to be able to see it here, but we'll fix that in a second. Okay, so again, let's turn off this line. Okay, that's good. And we can go and hit the plus sign. Let's make this a clipping mask. I'm just going to grab a gray. Use that watercolor. And again, I think we're on 2% and that should be fine. We can go in and just give this, just rub the edge of it. And that will give it a little bit of a shadow here. Just along that line to bring it in and make it not so flat looking. And of course, it'll also help with our, you can go on both sides here. For the end of this here, and that will, the tip of it, make that be actually visible, which is probably a good idea. All right, I think that looks good. You can just make little darker edges by going over it again if you wish. Okay, that's great. So let's go back to our watercolor. Actually, we can merge these two just by pinching them together, that's fine. We can go back to our watercolor. I'm just going to go to my smudge brush and I'm going to stay on watercolor with that. I'm just going to soften these edges a little bit, just where we've gone over. Just soften that just a touch. Okay, great. Okay, so now we have a pretty good base to this. Now let's start playing with a little bit of color. There's a few ways you can do it. I've seen some interesting techniques that I haven't used before, but I'm kind of curious to try. So let's do it together. I'm going to grab my selection tool and I'm just going to, let's see, just make a totally random section here, like so. And then I'm just going to say feather that up quite a bit, maybe about 20%. Then I'm going to go to my magic wand, go to hue and saturation, and then I'm going to play with the palette here. So let's just make that a little bit more blue. You can see that. And let's see if we, actually I'm not sure if I want to maybe just bring it up to 52, make that a little bit more blue. And that gives us some variation in color. I like it, that's fun. Okay, so we can do it again. We can go ahead and just make another completely different selection. Hit that feather that up a bit, and click on that magic wand, hue and saturation. Oh, that's cool. I like that. All right. I've just brought it a little bit more to the warmer side, so that's going to be at 63. And I think that looks kind of neat and very watercolory. So that's wonderful. Okay, so I think I'm gonna just sort of play with this and I'm going to just add some more color. Let's just go and do a clipping mask. Of course we can do it this way. I can do it all with those selections, I would think. That's pretty cool, but let's go in and paint this as well. So this layer is actually going to be set to multiply. Let's try that first and see how we go. I'm going to bring my brush up to about 15%. And I'm just going to paint the edges here. Actually, let's bring it even bigger, so about 40. Just going to bring in that color there. And maybe down here a little bit. That's kind of nice. This green color. And then let's just play with this and see if multiply is what we want. Color burn actually looks cool, but I do want it to have a green. So maybe darken is better. That green actually is showing up a lot more. So let's bring in this purple. Same thing. Just another way of painting it. I want it quite multicolored. Okay, I think that's looking good for now. So next I'm going to do some, actually I'm going to merge these two together. And then I'm going to go add the plus sign and I'm going to do quite a dark color, probably in these purples. So I've just selected my purple and I'm going to go down and get it. So it's quite dark. And again, this is all fun experimenting. I think this should work though. Let's go to materials and go to fine hair. You'll have this is already native to Procreate, so it should be fine. If you tap on that and go to stabilization and bump up that streamline all the way to max. Don't worry, you can undo this later just by going to about this brush and hitting reset, and it'll reset to all the regular settings for you. But for now, we'll just put streamline up to max, say done. And I'm going to I'm going to select, actually click on this layer here, your feather layer. Click on your selection tool with the freehand selected and just go up the stem of this. It's not a stem, it is the spine or something like that. And just select one side of the feather. Then go to your new layer with the fine hair brush on the darker purple. And let's just do some lines here. Okay, so we're gonna have to bring this up quite a bit. Maybe 40%. Let's try 50. Maybe 50 is better. Okay, so this brush is quite wiggly, so it's gonna probably take a little bit just to get your hand used to it. But this way we can do a few lines all at once. And we'll just go ahead and start putting these lines. So I just want them going in the direction of the feather here. And that will give us all those little lines that they have in there without having to draw every single one. Okay, so I'm gonna hit my selection tool, so that's off. Okay, great. And I can go ahead and just erase these down a little bit so they're not so extending and just fitting in there. I didn't want to make it a clipping mask just because it actually will change color. I'll show you. If you make this a clipping mask, it goes too faint, so I don't really like that. So I'm gonna keep it as a regular layer and just erase these a little bit. You can, if you wanted it fluffier, you could keep them, or you could be neater than me then when you're doing them. Either one. And then I'm gonna go and do the same thing. Just select this side of the feather, It's just that I don't go over the center. Hold on, let's get this right. Going right along that line. Selecting that, and then going to our line layer and doing the same thing on this side. Okay, and I can just erase those little edgy bits if I need to here. Okay, great. Undo that selection, and I'm going to take that layer and I'm going to set it to multiply, and I'm going to bring back the opacity to maybe about 50%, just so it's a little bit more subtle. Okay, great. So we have some lines in there but I still would like to go in and create a new layer. Go to my freebies, my pretty little lines of freebies, where I put them, and grab that sketch, my favorite sketch. And then I'm just gonna go in and do some of my own little detail work too, because I might want some of my own ones here. Again, just to give it, you know, more of a hand-drawn effect too. Okay, on that same layer, I'm just gonna go grab white, and I'm just gonna put in some little highlights here as well. Same thing, just getting these lines going. I think that gives it a nice added touch. Gonna make it a little more subtle on this one side. Just a few here. Add some in the fluff too. Okay, so then I'm going to go back to this layer that we have all our color on and go to my eraser and actually go to the materials and go to the fine hair. And that should still have our settings of streamline on it. So that's good. And I'm just going to go to the edges and just subtly bring in some lines so it's actually erasing. It's giving us this a different type of edge quality to it instead of just having that fluffy, more watercolor look. So I kind of like that. Again, this isn't a realistic feather by any means. This is just more stylized, painted look. So you can do it however you want to. All right, I think that's good for that. Let's bring in another clipping mask on top of this and just set that to clipping mask. I'm gonna bring in a darker color here. Let's try this red. I'm not sure about it. We might change this color. No, that's great. So I'm just gonna, oops. Just gonna, while holding my brush down, just darken this up a little bit. Maybe over here too. Still don't want to have that green in there, so I'm going to just bring back my eraser down to the freebies and have the watercolor. Just actually I'm going to take this away a little bit because I'm missing that little green edge I liked. Okay, so that's good. Let's play around a little bit with some shadows and whatnot. I'm going to again go to my watercolor layer, grab that selection tool, bring down this side, just select the one side and say feather again. And actually maybe we don't need to feather it at all. Maybe just a little bit, just a hair. 3%. And then go to hue and saturation, and I'm just gonna make this side a little bit darker. And maybe about there, maybe about 40%. I saw this technique from another fellow artist, so I thought I would like to give it a try. So you just select the last little half of this side, say feather it up quite a bit, maybe about 50%, and then go to your magic wand, hue and saturation, and then we're gonna lighten that a little touch on that side, see what happens. So that gives us a little bit of depth and variation there. I kind of like that, that's kind of fun. Okay, so I want to do some blobs and stuff. Let's see, we're going to go to our very, well, not quite the top layer, but this line layer here. Add a new one. And I'm going to just use this dark purple here. There we go. And I'm going to select one of Procreate's native brushes here. We're going to go to the water. I think this is our best bet here using these water flicks. Let's see how that goes. I think that'll be good. And I'm going to just go bring up the size about 40 and do a splotch there. Let's see. I think I'm just going to have like the top. See how that goes. Okay, let's make this. I'm going to set it to multiply and bring down that opacity. I'm just going to go back to my eraser and just grab that monoline. That'll work fine for us. And just get rid of all the mess here. Okay, just playing around here. So I think I'm going to actually duplicate my original colored layer here, like this one. And that's going to make it even more vibrant. And I love that way more. So don't be afraid to play around with that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to merge those together. I think that looks good. I'm just going to add another layer so it becomes a clipping mask and set it to white. And again, with the flicks, let's just see if we can add a few small ones around here. Just going to make it a little more painterly looking. This might be a little bit big. Depends what kind of look you want. If you like that splattery look. I think it looks kind of neat. Just sort of fun. You don't want to go too overboard, I guess. Let's just bring in, while we're here, you know what, we still have this clipping mask layer that we can go and grab this dark red again, grab our PLL freebies here, the watercolor, and maybe just darken up this a little bit. I'm going to bring it down to about 4. Just really emphasizing this edge here. Maybe in here you can just go around and darken a few areas, which kind of gives it a little extra something. Maybe this other side here. Just blending that out. Just using a soft touch. And I think actually this is going to be lighter down here. Maybe we'll lighten this up a little bit. Some of the edges. So of course it's going to be a little bit more downy. All right, I think that's good for our play today. Well, thank you so much for joining me while I totally experimented and have some fun doing something a little bit different. So if you did like this video, I'd love a thumbs up. It totally helps me out. Subscribe, hit that bell so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this every week. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.